sculptor whose work you see in this gallery, and she's my favorite sculptor. And we're so pleased and so honored to present the work of Paulo in this gallery today. So, without much else to say, I'm going to let Paulo do the talk. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Robert, and everybody that's helped me to put this show together. I think it's a beautiful space, and the beautiful people, artists, I'm talking to, and it's very important to me. It was a while that I wasn't, coming out and talk to people. I was a teacher for a long time, for like 15 years, including 2 years that I taught at the Cleveland Institute of Art from 1973 to 1975. And I want to tell you a story how I became a sculptor, because I was not a sculptor. At the Cleveland Institute of Art, I was teaching painting and drawing. And in fact, since I was a child, since I was 10 years old, I wanted to be a painter. I didn't want to be something else. Van Gogh was my first love, and I painted, like Van Gogh. And then eventually did all the schoolings. I went to the Institute of Art in Lucca, which is a great school at the time. I learned most of my things there. And then to the Academy of Art in Florence. And that was the time of the student revolution. So there was, a lot of drinking, a lot of happiness, and not much art, was produced. Eventually, I came to America, and I spent a year at Oberlin College doing art, making art, and eventually the University of Minnesota when I got my MFA, and then Cleveland. I came to teach to Cleveland. And when I got there, I started painting landscapes and figures and things. But when I got to the Cleveland Institute of Art, I was doing. That's how I make my sculptures. you can tell, right? Not a delicate hand, right? But when I got to Cleveland, I was painting large painting, abstract painting, and it was kind of, there was a small movement that was called, I don't know if anybody knows about it, but it was called lyrical abstraction. And it didn't produce that many artists, like Johnny Mitchell and a few others. But I went into the category, and I had enough experience that I could do pretty beautiful paintings, elegant and luscious, and they sold. I sold everything. At shows in Cleveland, Cincinnati, and I was selling the painting quite well. And then eventually there was the May Show. The May Show was the most important show in the Midwest at the time. Artists sent the paintings, the sculpture, and then there was a jury, and the first prize at that time was $75 went to Michikowski. I don't know if anybody remembers him, but he was teaching with me at the Cleveland Institute. And I got an honorable mention. Honorable mention was a good thing. I had my painting right in the middle of the museum. Senator Metzenbaum, Republican of Ohio, bought the painting, and I was like, I was in Cleveland. I was on the top of the food chain, but I was not happy. I look at my paintings, and I thought it was, they were pleasant. John knows them. He remembers their paintings. They were pleasant, but they were empty. They were just form. There was nothing beyond. And the artists that I love the most are the ones that had some soul in it, expression, like Francis Bacon or Soutine or Picasso or Van Gogh. That was the kind of art that I was attracted to, but I was not doing it. I was doing things that were beautiful, but they had no weight, those things. So one day, after the opening of the show, I'm in the museum and I'm looking at this painting, you know, thinking these thoughts in my head. I'm looking at this painting, and this student of mine, this woman came in, and she told me, "I love that painting. It looks so yummy." And when she said that, I almost fell in the ground. I thought, I'm gonna go throw myself in the Cuyahoga River. I'm doing yummy paintings. You know, this is, you know, it's terrible. That was my last painting. I said, I'm never going, until a few years ago when I started painting again, okay? That was my last painting. I said, I'm not going to paint again. I need to do something that you know, brings that dark matter that we all have inside out, and somehow as a cathartic, you know, kind of quality in my life. I want to do something that means something to me, it means something to people, and not something that is just formally beautiful. And it took a few years, but eventually I started doing the sculpture, and you know, there is not much of the early work. Like this is one of the early works, and they were cut with an axe. All these things are cut with an axe. You know, they were very. I thought, and it did two things. For one thing, I thought that the work has some merit. Difference, you know, what I was doing at the time, sculpture, at least at the time, was not expressive. It was something, if there was expression was implied and was, you know, worked, because it takes a long time, you know, you have to, whatever you use, marble or bronze or anything, you have to put it together, and it takes days and days, so you couldn't have the same kind of immediate expressive, let's say, like abstract expressionism, you know, that you took a brush, and, you know, de Kooning, he took a brush and these figures like that, and it was quick, and it was fast, and it was physical. Okay, now I could do the same thing with an axe, you know, I could just put it there, you know, I was in Tribeca, and when I worked, the whole neighborhood shaked. Everybody knew I was working. They're all black, you know, because I had a big fireman axe, and I was carrying these pieces of metal. But I could do them very quickly, you know, like a drawing, like a painting. I could just, you know, come up with something like that in 10, 15 minutes. And he had that kind of expressiveness and quickness that painting had, you know, that sculpture didn't have. At least that's the way I felt. And that you know, my father died tragically. Ended up on a train in the period I started sculpting. So a lot of stuff was coming out. You know, there was a you know, what I call the dark matter that we have inside us. Some of this stuff came out, and the way it worked was, you know, my wife at the time, she was into psychoanalysis. So I got involved thinking about that, and I read Freud's Interpretation of Dream, a big book. It took me, you know, forever, but I got involved into that aspect of art, you know, and I think what happened with me, what happened with everybody, I think, is that if I start working on a sculpture and I worry about, first of all, you know, you got to cut yourself, and it's difficult, and then somehow the defenses, you know, that keep your subconscious dark matter inside you, they get distracted. So things are coming out, right? And then you're working and you're doing a figure, and then all of a sudden you realize that figure is your father or your mother or something, or it's you, you know, and or at least you interpret it that way. And that's the you know, the early sculpture came up was very intense, you know, for me to do this kind of thing. And then it got softer. You know, you can see this is a different style than that one, or even that. And I got this idea. I thought I was not having a good time in New York, you know, showing my work, because the artwork was going in direction completely different, the opposite, like installation, new media, that's what's still now. But things have changed now. You see a lot of painting and sculpture coming back into the art scene. And I thought, what am I doing the work for? Who am I working for? Am I working for myself? No, I have a better time collecting stamps rather than working with this, rusted metal, right? Am I working for the artwork? No. So who is my audience, right? And my audience is my family, my friends, people that are interested in my work. And I thought, and I had this idea. I thought, okay, something. What is happening in the art world today is that art is very difficult for the most part. Okay, you go into any situation, you see installation, you see video, and you don't quite. I don't understand. It's 50 years I've been doing that, and I still don't understand most of the stuff I see. And I see it, and there's some kind of a visual experience, but I don't know the reasons why these things exist. And most people don't. If I don't understand it, most people don't understand it. So what has happened is that during the 50s and 60s, there were the avant-garde, the idea of avant-garde came in every discipline. It was movies, or poetry, or literature, or dance, and art. So it was a lot of experimentation, a lot of difficult things, which I did myself. I did conceptual art for a period of time. And then most art forms like cinema and literature and poetry and music went back to make things for a large public. They were not anymore for a small group of people that. Critics and people that were promoting this new invention, and you can and I think that if you look at cinema, which is probably the most important, not probably, certainly the most important art form today, the most diffused. Sometimes you get movies that are masterpieces, but they're for everybody. They're not just for a small group of people. And the same thing with music. You listen to Bob Dylan or whatever. It's for everybody. It's not just for a small group of people. Art is still today for a small elite of people, and people don't have any connections any longer with the art world. If they go to see the biennial in Venice, it's an experience. You go in and you look, it's art here, art there, and that's it. And I think that art has become quite irrelevant in both social and I'm talking about the visual art, both social and politically. And culturally, frankly, because it has no contact with the people any longer. Just a small group, relatively small group of people that are interested in promote the art. So I had this idea, okay, this is what I felt. I felt kind of isolated from the art world, and I felt like art was becoming so esoteric that there was no contact with intelligent people. I'm talking people that are interested. I'm not talking about. So I said, I had this radical idea. Okay, what about to try to make art that is intelligent, okay, is original, is formally competent, and symptomatic of our time, and for everybody, right? Everybody. And for everybody, I mean everybody. I mean every race, every country, every religion, every age, everybody. And I said, okay, that's what I'm going to, as a project, that's what I'm going to try to do. And then I started, I had to change, I don't have many of the older work, I had to change the work, I had to be more figurative, I had to be more descriptive so people can and that's the kind of thing that starting coming out, you know. And I believe, I hope that you don't need any explanation. You don't need to be of any particular to understand that. You can come from any part of the world or this, for instance, you know. And so this is a tentative that of reestablishing a contact with the people, you know, with friends and families and everybody that is interested in the work is what I've been trying to do with sculpture. But then I went back to painting about 3.5 years ago. I went back to doing painting for a number of reasons. One was my studio was, you know, was carrying, sculpture take a lot of space, and painting you can do you can pile them up, you know, and I do large painting, but also I wanted to try it again. You know, 39.5 years I've not touched painting. When I kept my promise, right? But the paintings are pretty much the same, with the same intention, you know, and to be able to connect with everybody, and using the proper, trying to find the proper formula, let's put it, to be able to do that. It's like you know, even in this piece here, it's a kind of universal themes, right, that I use, something that everybody can connect to. And also it become figurative. When I was in Cleveland, I was doing abstract art, and the art is figurative, and it's becoming more and more figurative. You can't try to establish a rapport with people with abstract art. Okay, and also I think the reason is, and I hope I don't offend anybody here, but and I also think abstract art as at its time. Okay, is no longer a vital form of art. Although if you go to the fairs, it's so much abstract art, you know, the minimalist kind, which, you know, is kind of taking off from things that are done in the 60s and 70s. And the reason why there is so much abstract art in galleries, new galleries are opening in Harlem, they're showing minimalist paintings, right? Because they sell. And they sell to big corporations, to hotels, you know, that they have to put something on the wall. And today you can put on anything on the wall that is figurative, because it could be in trouble, you know, whatever, you know, somebody could, you know, you could hurt somebody's feeling, right? So if you don't want to hurt anybody's feeling, if you don't want to offend your clients, you have abstract art of the minimalist type, because if it's expressive, then that could offend somebody, okay? So that's why it sells. But it has no, you know, to me it was a phenomenon of the 20th century. I did it, and it's gone. It's a different. You can't, you know, you can't, to find something different to do in an abstract painting like tech minimalism today would be quite challenging, right? You know, it's like the red painting has been done, the black painting, the white painting, you know, name it. In fact, I saw shows in New York with peas color paintings, you know, 2 shows 1 year. They're a little different. Because, you know, if you're going to be a monochromatic artist, you know, what you got to do? You're going to have to find a little color that nobody has used before. And also because I think I think the future, you know, in my opinion, and with John we've talked many times about this, I think that the future of art, if there is a future, is going to be art that connects with the people, no longer with an elite, in my opinion. And so you have to discard everything that doesn't communicate with you. You have to find a form or a way that communicate with others if you want to have art to have a future. Otherwise, you know, some people say, oh, this is a, you know, just think about this. In the last, you know, 1950s and 60s, there were art movements that they come up. There would be abstract expressionism, pop art, minimalism, conceptual art, op art, and then different photorealism, okay? The last movement that had a name was 1980, which was neo-expressionist. In Italy, it was called avantgarde. It was an international group of people. Some of the greatest artists, even today, they come from there, like the Germans, like Baselitz and Kiefer. That was a real movement. It was painting coming back again after many years of being, conceptual art had taken over, and painting, like myself, was seen as something that was obsolete. So it came back in the 80s in a very strong way, lasted about 10 years, and then nothing else, no more movement. There is a certain general names like installations or new media that is a generalized thing, but there hasn't been, unless you know something that I don't know, I'm not aware of a movement that can come out in the last 40 years that has a name. Right? So some people say, okay, it's not going to be any more movement, and the reason why there's not going to be any more movement anymore is because we have at our disposal everything that art has done, okay, everything. And art has done everything, has used everything. So it doesn't matter what you use, what you do, if you're doing installation, if you're doing painting, if you're doing sculpture. You just choose your own way, and if your art excels, then you become a prominent artist, but it's not going to be any more movement like we were in the past. And I find that extremely difficult to believe. Even if you go back to Renaissance, was a reaction towards Gothic, right? And then Baroque was a reaction towards Renaissance. So it always happened historically. If you look at art history, there is a movement, and then there is one movement that is a reaction to the previous one. That's kind of abandoned the previous one, and it comes up. And then when it got to it happens every 100 years, and then when it got to the 20th century, it happened every 10 years. Think about all the things that came out, surrealism, all the movement that came out, cubism, in that period. So I think that it's either art dies as a body, which I can't believe it. I can't possibly believe that something like that would happen, or something else is going to come up that is going to be a reaction to what's happening now. So we don't know what's going to be. The next wave of art is going to be. Nobody knows. Okay. It doesn't happen that way. It happens in a different way. But we know what it's not going to be. And what is not going to be, in my opinion, is 30 years of installations and videos and technology. I don't mean... and technological art, also because we're getting saturated with technology. It was so fascinating for so long, but now it's becoming a commonplace. Right? So I'm betting that the next, and maybe somebody would like to respond to that the next wave of art is going to be painting and sculpture. And certainly it's going to be painting, because painting has been around for like 500 years, the painting that you can move, that you can, transport. It's been about 500 years. The greatest works of art, I think, or most of them, they're paintings, right? And the most expensive art, the most expensive anything in the world is painting. What has gone up, auctions above $100 million is all paintings. There is no building, no sculptures, no paintings, right? So there is this incredible fascination. It's also an extraordinary game, because if you do sculptures, you start with the material, you can choose a number of materials. So just the choice of the material, it can distinguish you from other people. But if you're a painting, you got a white canvas there. And people have been doing things on the same way, starting with the white canvas for hundreds and hundreds of years. And I think it's the most sophisticated game, forget about chess, in the world, to be able to have a white canvas and to be able to do something that hasn't been done before. It's quite of a challenge. So I'm frankly dismayed by the art world today. Nothing is happening. Nothing has been happening of importance for a number of years. But I'm optimistic. I think art is going to come back. It's going to come back in a strong way. It's going to become a strong social and political force like it used to be for centuries. And but it has to be for the people. It has to be for a large audience. It can be for a small group. Otherwise, it's no importance. And I'd like to know if some of you have some thoughts about the present of art and the future.
I actually wanted to say something. So you mentioned that you believe that the most recent movement in art might have been, neo-expressionism. I would almost argue that it's actually commercialism. And I'm not talking necessarily as like one would think of the movement, in the past, with like Rococo or Baroque or something like that. But I feel that commercialism functions very heavily in the market as well, because you've mentioned to me privately that New York is almost being too watered down by the market. It's not really about the community anymore. And so in essence, I agree with you that I think the future of art is about engaging with the community, but not in the same ways that neo-expressionism did, but in ways that are directly contradictory to commercialism.
I think you're absolutely right. I think a parenthesis, what I say, is like New York has become the marketplace for art. It's no longer the cultural center of art, hasn't been for a long time. It was, when I moved to New York in 1970, it was the center of the world of art. So many ideas and things came out from there, and artists from all over the world came to New York. And when I moved there in '75, after I left Cleveland, I had a loft, a large loft, as large as this space here. And I was paying $300 a month for the rent. So artists came, it was a factory. There were still machines, I had to remove the machines, this thing. So artists came from all over the world, and we could go and eat in Chinatown for $3, great food. I was a teacher at the Cleveland Institute of Art, but I went to New York, and there was no teaching jobs. I mean, the teaching job, the famous artists were getting the teaching job. So I became like a handyman. I learned how to, fixing toilets and stuff and things, plumbing, all kinds of jobs, odd jobs that I was doing. But all I had to do to pay the rent and food is work a few days a week. That was enough to take care of yourself, and you could do art. All around there were artist bars, Magoo's, famous artist. It used to be a whorehouse, and then it became an artist bar. And then in my street, in 40 Walker Street, there was I lived in Walker Street, there was two off-Broadway theaters, one dance company and an art place called Art in General that is still there now. I showed there many years ago, it's still there. And so the whole area was filled with people that, poetry, meetings, music. You could go in small clubs and hear, great music. It's all gone. It's all disappeared. There's nothing left. The old Tribeca is boutiques and fancy restaurants. A restaurant now, a small restaurant in New York is like $40,000 a month to pay rent is average. My loft, where I was paying $300 a month, and I lived for 30 years there. Now, they told me, people live next door, is $15,000 a month. My family lives there for $15,000. So what's happening? Artists, they can't live, you can't be a sculptor in New York any longer. You can't be a painter. And that is also the reason why installation is because you do it on your computer, but people live in a small apartment, 3 people, you work on the computer, and then they come up with the project, and they can do the project in a gallery or in a museum. So New York is still a great city to live. I'm a night person, and I see the difference when I'm here and when I'm in New York. You know, here at night people sleep, and but stay in Cleveland. Stay in Cleveland. I think, you know, if you don't even think about going to New York, you know, because it's not what it used to be, and you go there, you have to work your ass off to pay for an apartment. You only know a few people. There are hundreds of thousands of artists, but you only know a few, which your friend, and it has become, just to be able to get a show in New York, the competition is so fierce that, you know, it's like you don't even want to think about it. So I think that perhaps New York today is the worst place in the world to be an artist, because you can go anywhere else in any cities and do your work and be connected. The internet connects you. You can see things on the internet that was sharper than, you know, you see them in real thing. And it's a real connection, and there's no need. There is no need. You know, if you wanted to be an artist in the 1900s, you went to Paris. Okay, Paris was the place that artists would go, and almost every American artist went there for a period of time. If you were an artist in the 60s and 50s and 70s, you went to New York. If you're an artist now, the world is globalized. You don't go anywhere. You stay in your place, and you can make connections, you know, with various things. And you know, it's like. And it's not going to come back. It's not coming back. You know, the art culture in New York is not coming back. Like, it didn't go back to Paris, you know, because Montmartre became like Tribeca. You know, forget about it. The most fashionable place, and so the artists have to move out. And basically, the reason why New York is no longer the center of culture, it's real estate. It's the price of real estate. That's what. The politicians in New York, they weren't. I didn't think about the fact that if they didn't have some protection for the artists, the arts scene was gonna end, you know. And we're starting to feel it now, but in the future, you know, it will be even more acute. You know, prices keep going up and up and up and up, you know, and. So if I you know, I would you know, I wouldn't mind to come to Cleveland, a place like Cleveland or Detroit, you know, and work in places where you don't have the pressure of paying your rent and all the time, and in the small places like this, you meet everybody. You know every artist, you have your friends, you have a community of artists. You can show you're in New York, you know very few people, your friends, and that's it, you know. And you're pretty isolated in that sense. And it's not just it's not just my own feeling. I think it's general feeling. Everybody talks about what's happening there. Everybody feels, you know, that is there, feels that way. Anybody wants to comment on that? John, what?
At the same time, one thing you have to remember as an artist, that you got to be better than the other artists.
Then you can.
That's how you get attention.
Well,
Do you want to use the mic? Yes.
say it.
I mean, the one thing about being an artist, and even an artist in New York, is that okay?
Yeah,
You got to really work at being the best artist.
that's
Because
it.
the
That's it.
majority of artists are
That's it.
rather mediocre. And if you can, you need to find a way to separate yourself from the herd. The herd is all those other artists.
That's it.
And I think still in New York is the biggest challenge for an artist. All you gotta do is ask Dana Schultz. You know, she left here, became a big star overnight almost.
No, Young is absolutely right, and I agree with him 100%. And I think that art history is basically just, okay? And I know a lot of people are not going to agree with me, but I think that the people that the artists that you see in the art history books, you know, in they're about this size, you know, the art history book, and they can only contain a number of artists. You can't make a double or triple, you know. It has to remain that size, right? So there's only a number of artists that can be in the art history, and I think that. Leaving aside today, you know, you got to look, you know, let's say 100 years, but that the ones that deserve to get there, they get there, and the ones that don't deserve to get there, they don't get there. So, you know, I don't have any illusion. If I do something is good enough, it's going to be kept and safe and recognized. If it's not good enough, it's going to go. There are exceptions. It's not 100%. There are some people that deserve to be there that are not there, and there are some people that are there and they shouldn't be there. So there are exceptions. Generally speaking, the good ones go into art history, and the only way to become, and it's very, very difficult to become good enough. But the only way, that's what John has. You have to focus on your work, and you got to be the best you can possibly be. You got to give your life. You got to give everything to it, and then you have a chance.
I'd like to say one thing. For 10 years, I did critiques at the Art Institute for the student painters, and all the students year after year have the same teacher, and all the students were very, very good artists and painters. The students got the same schedules, the same projects. Class after class. And I've seen so many people painting expressive, figurative work that's of personal content, year after year, and they were all very good. And then what separated Dana Schultz from all of those other students over all those years? She gave more of herself and her personal life into those works. And that's what separated her from.
That's exactly. Yeah, exactly. I have said that to some of you. We were talking with this young artist here. What's your name? Okay, and that's what we were talking about. And I was saying, look, I don't believe. I think we're all born with the same intelligence, more or less. We're all born. I don't believe there is not such a thing as talent. We're all born the same, okay? I was a teacher for so many years, 15, 16. The only time I met one kid that had an innate ability of, you know, whatever, I don't know how his mind worked, but you say a horse or any animal or anything, and we just go like this, and I never saw anybody. Certainly I had to learn everything. I didn't do it that way. Now this kid was the only one, and he had no interest in art whatsoever. He's in political science in Italy. He's a politician. And so we all have the same ability, the same intelligence, the same talent. And what makes the difference, what John said, you know, if you go there and you know, they insist and you don't give up, and that is what's going to make you stand out from other people. You know, how much you put of yourself in there. And everybody has the same chance of getting into the art history book than everybody else. And you know, I'm getting. That's why I work at night, all nights, every night. Every night I start about 11 in the evening, you know, and I work until 5 or 6 in the morning. That's what I do. And you know, to me, has always been, since I was a kid, and I was a bad kid. I was a bad student. It took me 5 years to do 3 years of junior high school. Just imagine how bad I was. That was a terrible situation. The only thing so I was always in the last row, you know, in the school, and I couldn't care about what anybody said. So I sat there, you know, the drawing, making drawings and things. And I could draw a little better, not much, but a little better than the other kids. And I think that was what somehow got me into, because that's the only good thing I could do. Everything else was awful, right? Yeah.
The reason I came here was to ask you a question. I've had a real...
Can we have the
No,
microphone?
no.
No, you have to, you can't ask a question without the microphone. Oh, come on.
Where is it? Oh, it's right here. I am suffering from artist block.
From?
Artist block.
Okay, what is that?
No creativity.
No
And
creativity?
I've been so ultra creative for so many years. And I had a lot of problems in the family, I guess. And so now I can't do anything. So give me suggestions.
Okay. But you want to. You want to be creative. You want to make art. You're starting. Well, my suggestion is the same suggestion I gave it to this young woman. Forget about ideas. You know, when you go to a class and the teachers they're talking to you about ideas, forget about it. Ideas are cheap. Everybody has an idea. There are millions of ideas. And somebody's telling you an idea, somebody else already had that idea. Okay? So forget about that. It's got to come, to you. Just concentrate on learning skills. Okay? Skills. Learn how to draw, to paint, things. Because you may not use them now, but they're going to come up, whatever you learn, it's going to come up later, sometime when you need it, or subconsciously it's going to come up. So focus on skills, whatever the skill is, if you use a video camera, or if you pencil, or whatever you use, but learn as much as you can and put your time in acquiring skills, because skills do two things. One, they give you the material to be able to expand your work in whatever direction you want, but also they give you respect from people. If you have a skill, people respect skills. Ideas, nobody respects his ideas, And skill, you go to school, expect, demand that people teaches you useful skills, whatever they are. You want to do fresco, you want to be pre-making, drawing, sculpture, whatever. But focus on that, and the whole. Forget about all the whole idea. Focus on that. Do what your heart tells you to do. Don't look around too much about whatever is inside you, and then eventually. If you can't give your life to it, you're not going to make it in the art history books. That's my opinion. I don't know anybody that is in the art history book that didn't give it totally, or not, if not totally, but give a lot of self for herself to art. Right? Anybody else has a...
I kind of wanted to feed off of a couple of things that was said.
I can't hear you.
I wanted to feed off of a couple of things that was said. First off, I definitely agree with you with the whole New York thing. I used to live there, and a lot of times, especially the Clevelanders, have the tendency, they have all this talent inside of them, and they always say Cleveland is dead, and then they go to places like California or New York, and find out that it's like this huge rat race of people all trying to chase the same thing. And many times these days, you find artists who have the talent, and they're just kind of doing it so they can put food on their table, or food, on their table, as opposed to creating something that there's a possibility that no one may like it, but it's like coming from your soul, even if it's not appreciated in that time. And I'm definitely, I can say for myself that I'm the type of artist where I like to create art that speaks, as opposed to just making art because, oh, I have a really good talent. Because even what he was saying, you know, to be the best, I think it's not just being the best in skill, but being the best in putting yourself into what you're doing as well. So it's like a combination of the two. Because I do know some people who, like, their skills are half this world, but it's like you don't really feel the person in the piece. You just feel like, you know, you clearly have the talent, but the heart isn't there, or something like that.
Well, that's what I was telling to you. You know, when I was doing the painting, the skill was there, but the art wasn't there. You know, it wasn't. You know, myself was. That's what was missing. And I think you're right. You have to have both. You have to have a combination of both. It can be the skill alone, and it can be just heart alone. You gotta put the two together, and to make the pizza. You know, it's like mozzarella and tomato sauce. But you know, but so you agree that Cleveland is not bad to be an artist in Cleveland, right?
No, I think Cleveland is actually one of the best places to start. And this is coming from someone who used to hate Cleveland with her guts. And then this time, I used to hate Cleveland with my guts. But as time went on, I think a lot of times people just put their focus on the wrong things because a lot of people, you know, want to be recognized. And, you know, we live in a world where everything is like this. So if they don't get the recognition that they want and the time that they want, they tend to just kind of begin to chase things instead of appreciating the possibility of what they have. Like, it's easier in a smaller town to know someone.
It is. It's easier. It's easier to show. It's easier to have a community of artists, you know, and get together. And well,
I was just going to say, one of the things that an artist really needs is a elevated sense of curiosity. You got to want to know something, you want to see things.
well, yeah. You need a. Okay, I have some criteria. I have, you know, it's like it's another topic. But are there any criteria that an artist should follow, or just go and do whatever? And there are criteria, and some, you know, writers and artists wrote about these criteria, right? And for one thing, you know, you need to understand. You need to have an overview of art history. You gotta understand art history, where it comes from and gets here, because if you don't have an overview of art history, you never know where you stand. You never know what you're doing, if it's been done, or if somebody is actually, you know, what is connected with. So you have to have an overview of art history. You can't do it now. The second thing that you need to do, you need to, you know, to respond to let things come up as freely as possible. You know, not stop your emotions. And then once they come out, then you have to put it into a contest. You know, that become painting, a sculpture, so that kind of thing. But you have to learn how to open up the doors of your unconscious, somehow distracted in such a way that things stop, you know, coming up, and it materializes, you know, in works of art. You know, that is one thing that you need to go. You also, like, you can imitate. You know, when you're young, you imitate, but you have to. You know, you see other artists and you're impressed, and you do it. That's where you learn. But eventually, you have to find your own way. And your own way, the farther it is from other people, the better it is. That's a simple. You know, as far as you can go. So if the art world is things are happening here, and there is you know, new things are happening, and you go there and you want to be part of it, you know, the pie has already been, you know, eaten up, and all you got is crumbs. So you go there and you try to, you know, eat something like that. But so if you see something happening there, you go in the other direction, where nobody's there. And then maybe you can find something. Because this is already done. Forget about it. You know, if you see it in the news, it's already done. Somebody's already eaten the pie, all right? And I think another thing you have to forget about the money aspect of it. You know, it's like everybody wants to. You can think when you do your work. When you do work, you can never think about, am I going to sell this? Is this something that it will compromise it? You know, it's like I found myself 2 or 3 times that people give me, you know, I just work the way I work, but you know, people giving me a commission, can you make this for me? And it was a lot of money. And I said, you know, sure. And I couldn't quite do it, You know, I couldn't do something that somebody asked me to do. It didn't have the kind of surprises and events that happened that, you know, that other work have. It looked cold, you know, it didn't have a soul, you know, that kind of thing. And what are the criteria, John, that the artist has to follow? You can. It was T.S. Eliot that said he wrote a series of criteria in a book. The artist, the individual talent, and how was it called? The individual talent and the tradition and the individual talent. He talks about particularly this kind of thing. It's like, you know, he said famous things like artist doesn't borrow, steals, and all the great artists like Picasso, he would take a painting of Delacroix or somebody and turn it into his own work. So you can use other artists, but you have to incorporate it in your own vision. If you imitate somebody, you're always going to be second rate. You know, there is no imitator never make it into the book. And also it says one thing that I read something about a group of years ago, a group of psychologists that were studying creativity at Harvard University, and they found out that it takes 10 years to be able to do anything. You know, generally, I mean, speaking, it takes 10 years to be able to do anything, whatever, music or art, and not because the technique that you have to learn, not because of that, because you have to lose your self consciousness. Like if you're dancing, you know, the only way you can dance is when you lose your self-consciousness and become second nature, then you can dance. Or you ride a bicycle. It takes 10 years to get, just to let go, okay? I don't know if it's true, but that was a study, and they studied all the great artists, and they, you know, found out that thing. They also said, it was interesting, there is a moment of crystallization. Something happening in your mind at a certain age, you know, earlier for musicians, later for artists. There is one event, one situation that somehow created in you this fascination and this desire to become whatever, a musician or an artist. Right? So it's not everything, should I say, it's not everything is casual, you know, you just go there and you take a bite. I think there's a lot that one has to think about and mature and understand, and again, you gotta give it its life to it, and it's not, you know, if you give your life to you know, become an engineer, you know, then you can get a job and you can be an engineer and you can be happy, the American dream. If you're an artist, your future life is unknown, totally unknown. You don't know what's going to happen, where you're going to end, what kind of success or not success you're going to have, how financially you're going to manage. You have no idea. So you get into a dark tunnel. I'm not being pessimistic, you know. I'm being optimistic. I think that's the greatest life of all, you know. Being an artist, I don't think there is anything greater to be, you know, a creative person. There's nothing greater than that, you know, and more noble than that in a way. and you get feedback, and you get respect from people. So you got a lot of stuff, but it's a difficult life, you know. It's not an easy one.
It helps to have a good, how do you say, like a role model. What's the word I'm looking for?
Mentor.
Someone that will tell you the truth. I mean, I remember this artist who, there was this artist, he's deceased now, who was really quite an incredible person. He was a photographer, he was a writer, he was a critic, he was a museum director. And I keep running across this one artist every other year or so, and she reminds me how much John Goldman's made her cry, but made her a better artist. What's the word?
Mentor?
Mentor, thank you. Such a simple word. A good mentor is also you're very lucky if you have one. And usually that won't be your art teacher. It's going to be a particular individual that somehow you come together and they can mentor you. And pretty much every artist has one at some point in their life. Anyway, I'm a happy artist. But my rent just went up.
Kind of like what you were saying before, I kind of wish that lady was here when she was asking about
How to resolve artist block. And, you know, one thing that she mentioned was something happened in her family, and then she just kind of like couldn't do it anymore. And I think that the best resolve for artist block is just to simply reach into yourself. Because sometimes if somebody, for example, is used to, I don't know, painting happy paintings or sculpting something that is joyful, and then maybe something sad happened to them, and then, you know, all of a sudden they stop, because it's like, there's nothing for me to produce, whereas it's not true. It's just that the art will then evolve, because at the end of the day, I think the best art is the art that comes from you. So turn those emotions, those feelings, the things that you can't explain into art, the things that you can't use words to describe into art. And I think that's like the best result for artist block, at least in my experience. Because sometimes, you know, when, at least the times when I did experience artist block, it was like, because either I was trying to create something for someone else, or I wasn't really creating things that really resonated with me in my heart and my soul. So every time I just kind of took a second and, you know, sat back and really thought about, you know, what I was going through or whatever, like feel as much as I could possibly feel, then I just began to get like all this inspiration for new.
You see, when you do that, when you work trying to get out your feeling, your dark matter, whatever you want to call it, the work becomes inevitably dark. Okay, not because you're a dark person, because that's exactly, you know, because those demons, those fears, and anger, whatever is inside you, you know, that has been there from childhood, and probably the biggest part is the whole, you know, the child is there and it's not going to go away. You're going to have it all your life, but so when you bring it out, it's never happy. It's never something. You know, you look around here, it's all death and destruction. You know, because I precisely work that way. I try to get it. Not because I'm a particularly unhappy person, probably averagely happy or whatever. You know, like, but because the work is cathartic for me. It's taking out these dark matters, materialize it, put it onto the wall. It's a little bit less than that is inside. And so inevitably, you worked away, you worked, trying to bring out your feelings, your fears, whatever. The work is going to look dark. Always does.
I have something to say. Is this on? I think a big part of that is letting go of that fear that you have, of like the idea that you think you have, but like you just gotta let go of that and kind of say, forget that. And then kind of just like unravel these like hidden things inside of you. And I feel like you talking about, your ideas are, everyone has ideas, but like once you get down to that certain point, then that's when magic, I call it magic, but things just kind of happen.
Things happen that somebody scare you. Somebody, it's like there have been times, not much in recent time, but earlier when I was doing this thing, of getting goosebumps, doing something and then you're realizing it's your dead father or mother or whatever, or it's something that you didn't want to even think about it, or you don't want to deal with, and it's some deep insecurity that boom, you see it there, and it doesn't matter if it actually was a Latin kind of a thing that has come out, or if it's an interpretation. The result is always the same. You're just frightened sometimes, and but what you're doing, look what I did, and it used to happen to me a lot. I was involved, I was thinking about, and I was working in a manner that so much turmoil came out, and some of us were very painful. Now I'm more, I think it's still the same. Still I see things coming out. It's all about families. Even if I do the end of the world or see something, it's always about yourself, about family, about your friends, about the people around you. And the substance is always very, very close to you. Even if you're doing something that it doesn't seem to touch your own personal. Whatever you do as an artist, it's always you're expressing yourself. Whatever you do, it's always a self-portrait. In one way or another. It doesn't matter what style you have. It's you.
I'd like to offer one, I think, a perfect example of what you're just saying. Eric Fisher, when he first came on the scene in maybe 80, 79, 80. What he was painting was his life experience as a young kid, young man growing up in his family. And I was at a lecture that he gave one night, and one of the people in the audience stood up and said, "Mr. Fisher, I'd like to know how you got to where you are as an artist." And he said, 20 years of therapy. And I remember I used to see him going to therapy on Thursdays. But all those early paintings were all about how he saw his family, how he saw his mother, the dysfunctional suburban life, basically, was what is all that.
They're always, as I said, everything. Sometimes you don't recognize it, but if you look at it, if you look at the reason behind anything you do, there is always a reason, deep reason for doing something. You may not be able to recognize it. You may need a therapist to recognize it, but it's this is. I know it's going to sound corny, but it's a portrait. It's your soul that comes out. That you have. And you can't hide that. It's always going to come out. In one way or another. Even if you're doing minimalism, even then, there is. If you go to a good therapist, you'll find out if the painting is, stripe painting is your mother or your father.
Well,
Are there any more questions? I think we've pretty much explored what there is to explore.
We're all ready to go and jump in the Cuyahoga River.
Yeah. Make sure the planes are out first. So I want to thank Paulo for sharing his thoughts with us, and I thank all of you for coming. It really makes a difference. So thank you very much, and come to the opening.